All right, so that was probably the most deflating end to an NBA season I can ever remember. Not only for the obvious feeling devastated for Tyrese Halliburton, feeling devastated for Pacers fans and the rest of the guys on that team, but also as a fan, you wanted to see OKC have to be great. And the way Halliburton started that game, the way OKC couldn't really score, you could tell they were going to have to tap into greatness to win that game. And we were robbed of all of that. And it almost seems cruel how fast the world just keeps moving, right? Indiana, your next season is pretty much over and the world just keeps on going. Draft on Wednesday, and now it makes you wonder, what are these other Eastern Conference teams gonna do when the last two teams to make the finals out of the East are pretty much out of it for next year? And I really mean the Eastern Conference as a whole. You know, the Desmond Bane move looks even better now. But yeah, I mean the Eastern Conference as a whole, but the two teams that really stand out to me are two teams that were or are at a bit of a crossroads. And I'm talking about the Bucks and the 76ers, right? If we look back 5 years ago and what we thought Joel Embiid and Giannis would be doing, we thought they would be dominating the East. Giannis only made one finals. Embiid hasn't made a finals, hasn't made a conference finals. It was supposed to be their conference after LeBron left. And I've made several videos about how that was supposed to be like the biggest rivalry in the NBA, Giannis versus Embiid. And if you look at the East has been giving us the real classic rivalries, right? It's been Miami versus Boston. It's been Boston versus Milwaukee. It's been Miami versus Milwaukee, right? Those three teams have all kind of been intertwined, while Joel Embiid has been nowhere in that conversation. And to be fair to both of them, a lot of it has been injuries, right? Joel Embiid always being injured, Giannis being injured a bunch, and Chris Middleton being injured, and Dame being injured, right? So there has been a lot of injuries at play. But now with, again, the two teams that were last in the finals from the East, their star players tearing their Achilles, does it change the calculus for your next couple years if you're these teams? For me, it absolutely does. Starting with Milwaukee, of course it does. Now, Milwaukee is a little bit different because they are still like so limited on what they can actually do to improve their team. But you have Giannis, right? And obviously that's not enough. We've known it's not enough and it's still not enough. But now you can at least kind of, delude yourself into thinking it might be enough. And maybe they can swing some type of move and some player blossoms there that we never seen coming, right? It's a long shot. It's not going to happen. But again, you could delude yourself into thinking, why can't we be in the conference finals next year when there's no Indiana and there's no Boston? I'm mildly intrigued by a full season of Ryan Rollins without Dame. Is that going to do it? Probably not. Probably not. So that one's not that interesting. But Philadelphia, they could go a lot of different ways here, right? First of all, we don't even know what exactly is going on with Joel Embiid and his health situation. And what's funny, last year we kind of thought, oh, they'd be able to survive without Joel Embiid. And that really wasn't the case, although, Tyrese got hurt, Paul George got hurt. But even when those guys were there without Joel Embiid, they weren't very good. But that whole season just kind of seemed over from the start. But let's assume Joel Embiid is going to come back at some point next year, healthy. What should Philadelphia really be doing this offseason, right? Paul George is there. I don't think Paul George is going anywhere. Although there was this weird rumor about Utah a couple days ago. Let's assume Paul George is going to be there. Maxi's going to be there. Jared McCain, is he going to come back looking like himself? Probably. Let's give him that. So you got those four. Now, the elephant in the room is obviously the third pick of this year's draft. And is it possible that you trade that pick? Now, it would be kind of crazy to make that decision off of Tyrese Halliburton tearing his Achilles. And you don't really want to make an all-in move because Joel Embiid and his injury history, you would look dumb and you would have no one but yourself to blame if you passed up on someone that is going to be a future Hall of Famer for a one-year run. You would just look idiotic. But what if you could somehow get a young player for that pick? Someone that could probably help you more in the playoffs next couple years and still be around, 3-4 years from now when Joel Embiid is either, retired or washed or whatever, right? But it's really hard to find that player for Philadelphia. An all-star level player in their mid-20s that's available is kind of hard to find. Immediately, my mind goes to someone like LaMelo, but that doesn't really fit. That's another injury-prone player. But I could see a world where Charlotte might be interested in number 3 for LaMelo and just starting over, right? Something like that. A player almost completely opposite of LaMelo. What about like Deni Avdija, right? I could see Philadelphia, you know, he's a very good player, only 24 years old, could help a lot right now, is going to be there post Joel Embiid in theory. I don't even know if Portland would do that. The 3rd pick straight up for Deni Avdija obviously can't be straight up, but I'm not sure they would do that. I might sound crazy, but I'm a big Deni guy. I was even before this year, but if I'm Philadelphia, I'd probably do that, right? If I have any belief in Joel Embiid being able to stay healthy and I could go out there with Maxey, Paul George, Deni Avdija, Joel Embiid, Jared McCain, I don't know, I would consider it, right? They're in a very interesting situation. Do they prioritize Joel Embiid or do they look toward the future? That's why maybe trying to split the middle and getting someone like a Deni who's only 24 but still very good right now, as opposed to waiting for the development of a VJ Edgecombe. Like, I'm not sure. I'm not sure what the right decision is there. It really depends on what you feel about Joel Embiid going forward. Because once again, the last 2 teams to make the finals out of the East, their best player tore their Achilles. So it's a different landscape now, which again makes the Desmond Bane trade look even better. I loved it when it happened. Everyone's worried about picks, a bunch of picks that probably will never be as good as Desmond Bane. Just odds are, right? And going into next year, if Joel Embiid is healthy, if Giannis is healthy, those are still the 2 best players in the conference. They still are. So I don't really know what the right move is for those teams, and specifically for Philadelphia, some tough decisions coming up. But not only those teams, right? Orlando made the move, and Orlando's kind of different because we all already believed they would be a great team or a very good team this year before everyone got hurt. So them, you know, doubling down and getting Desmond Bane is not the most shocking thing in the world because they don't seem that far away. But I'm wondering if other teams now look at it and again don't feel that far away. Obviously the first team that comes to mind is the Pistons. The Pistons were one of the teams I really wanted to see KD go to. I just feel like it would have slotted in perfectly. Probably would have had to give up Jaden Ivey and a pick and Tobias, and they probably could have made that work easily, but we never even heard them come up. Do they maybe make a move? And it's hard for them to make that move because of Jaden Ivey and not knowing what you have in him yet and not wanting to give up on that for a potential rental. So maybe they wouldn't even have included him in the Kevin Durant deal. To me, I love Derek White here, but are they going to give up Jaden Ivey for Derek White? Probably not. And what also makes the Pistons intriguing is they are one of the few teams that can take back extra money, right? So in a Derek White deal, they would only have to make up $20 million of his $28 million. So it could be Jaden Ivey, Fontecchio, Marcus Sasser, and that's enough money right there to get Derek White. I'm just throwing it out there. I think they're going to make a move, or maybe not. Maybe it's the opposite effect. Maybe they feel like, you know what, we were right there, and why should we make any move when these teams got worse? Maybe New York feels the same way, but I think Detroit would be wise to look at this as an opportunity, not giving up too much of your future. But it's really Jaden Ivey and making a decision on how you feel about Jaden Ivey, or maybe you can make an upgrade at what Beef Stew's salary. I'm not sure. I think they're gonna make a move though. And then besides them, hopefully Chicago won't do anything stupid and feel like, oh, we can make a run here. Miami, a lot of people were kind of down on Miami trading for Kevin Durant, but if you look at the East now, and they were going into next year with Bam, Kevin Durant, Tyler Hero, Davion Mitchell, Khalil Ware. I could have talked myself into something there in this Eastern Conference. So who knows what Miami's gonna do, but the other really interesting teams to me are the Hawks and the Raptors. 2 teams that I don't believe are as far away as they seem. With the Hawks, I don't really have to explain. Trae Young, Dyson Daniels took a leap. Ricochet year 2, Jalen Johnson coming back. Okongwu kind of finally took over that starting center spot. Like, I could really see a world where if this team were to make a move, right? If this team had a Desmond Bane, right? And it was Desmond Bane, Trae Young, Dyson Daniels as your 3 backcourt members. So I know Atlanta has done a lot of questionable things as of late. If you look back at the trades they made, not that they were terrible trades, right? The DeAndre Hunter trade and the Bogdanovich trade, I don't think they were terrible deals, but if you look back at that and they kept that salary slot, they could have got a Brandon Ingram. They could have got a Kevin Durant. I made a video in January saying the Hawks were the perfect Kevin Durant trade team because he would just slot in, You would have the defense, you would have the elite playmaker, right? So they kind of blew that because now they don't have any real money to trade. Well, they have Terrence Mann and George Niang, which makes up about $23 million, which is not that much. And also nobody really wants those players, wherein they could have packaged Hunter and Bogdanovich and brought back a Brandon Ingram, even now like a Drew Holiday. Now that's not really an option because if you look at it, the only players they have making $15 million or more are Okongwu, Jalen Johnson, Trae Young, and Terrence Mann. And the idea would be to add to Trae Young, Okongwu, Jalen Johnson, Dyson Daniels, Ricochet. You could have made a big move and added to those guys without giving up anything significant of your future, and they kind of fumbled that. So now I don't know what that move would be, but speaking of Brandon Ingram, let's talk about the Raptors. Now, I'm higher on all these players than most people. Not all these players. I'm higher on Brandon Ingram. I'm higher on Jakob Poeltl. I'm higher on Scottie Barnes than a lot of people seem to be. I don't have many strong opinions about Emmanuel Quickley. I did not know he was already 26 though. I don't know why I thought he was a bit younger. But yeah, don't have many strong opinions on him. And then obviously RJ Barrett is the name that's being floated around in a bunch of trade rumors. And if they trade RJ and get the right piece back or pieces back, I think this could be a pretty surprisingly good team. When I look at this team, I feel like they need a backup center, they need a backup point guard, and they need one more shooter. If I had to guess, they're probably going to address the backup point guard in the draft. Yegor Demin or Kasparis Yakachonis. Hopefully I'm saying that name right. And I think I might like him a little bit more in terms of fitting next to BI and Scottie Barnes. I'm not sure who I would take, as a prospect more, but the fit, I think he fits a little bit better. I could see them maybe taking Thomas Sorber a little bit early. I don't know if anyone has him going as early as 9, but seems like a really Raptors type of pick. But point being, depending on who they take in the draft, that kind of changes what they would want in an RJ Barrett deal. Like, I could see a hypothetical Clippers deal. Again, there's been no reporting about the Clippers being interested in RJ Barrett. I just keep putting that out there in the world. But I could see like a RJ Barrett for Norman Powell and Chris Dunn. And I could see a deal like that making Toronto better, not because Norman Powell is a better player, but because it would be a better fit. In theory, right? In theory, Norman Powell is kind of one of those in theory players. Like, I feel like if you watch Norman Powell on a daily basis, you probably don't like him as much as people that don't watch him on a daily basis. And there's quite a few players like that. Norman Powell makes some strange decisions out there, but I could see that deal working. For the Clippers, you're trading Norman Powell on the last year of his deal for a young player that has real talent, that has shown real flashes as I don't want to say as a number 1 option, but as a lead ball handler. You traded for Bogdanovich. You don't really need Norman Powell and Bogdanovich. I could see it working out for the Clippers. Just throwing it out there. Again, there's been no reporting on RJ Barrett to the Clippers. It just seems like a Clippers type of move, but I'm talking too much about the Raptors. Overall, the Eastern Conference is in complete disarray, and who knows what's going to happen, right? Who's going to feel emboldened? Who's going to feel like they probably shouldn't make a move now? And the draft is coming up, so we'll see what happens. Let me know what you guys think in the comments down below. Please like, comment, subscribe. On the road to 10,000 subscribers. It will mean the world to me. Thank you guys so much for watching. I'm out. Peace.